Now, first up, I'd love to introduce my first guest, Dr. Päivi Räsänen, who has been introduced to me via the ADF, who you guys will know are always fighting the good fight for the faith. Dr. Päivi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and thank you for having me.
Not at all. Thank you for coming on. Now, I first met you at my previous employer. I met you in the green room at GB News, and I was taken back by your case because it struck me that someone who has been a minister of government, someone who is a member of parliament, can be persecuted to such a high degree. It struck me as what hope do the rest of us have? Now, for my viewers that aren't necessarily familiar with your case, could you maybe tell us a bit of the background of what's happened to you over the last 5 years, starting with what first took place maybe on Twitter?
Yes, it started almost 5 years ago when the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland decided to publicly to support the Helsinki Pride event. And it was a shock for me because I belong to that church. And I took a photo from the Bible, from the first chapter of Romans, where Apostle Paul teaches about the homosexual relationships. And I made a Twitter update and asked the leadership of my church that how is it possible that you are celebrating as a pride something that Bible calls sin and shame? And after that, there was some citizen made a criminal complaint about that Twitter update, and police started to investigate the case. And when it came into public, then there became more and more criminal investigations and complaints about my writings. And there was a booklet, church booklet that I had written already over 20 years ago about marriage and sexuality, and it was the other criminal charge. And after that, I have been twice in court, in Helsinki District Court, and then in the Court of Appellate, and they have decided in favor of me. And Bishop Juhana Pohjola, he's also charged because he published that booklet, right. Church booklet. Yes.
So just
probably the case. And now I'm waiting for the trial in Supreme Court because the prosecutor has appealed to Supreme Court.
It's astonishing to me. For those who don't know, one of your original tweets was, "How does the doctrinal foundation of the church fit in with shame and sin being raised as a matter of pride?" I think that's a very fair question, a very decent question to ask. Anyone who adheres to the Christian faith might be asking that question. Why are we painting shame and sin? Why are we raising them to the matter of pride? And we should address the matter of pride because it's publicly celebrated. One of the 7 deadly sins is celebrated as a good thing now. And so you raised the question and you were told that it's hate speech. And you also quoted from Romans chapter 1, verses 24 to 27. So it seems to me that what's on trial isn't just yourself. What's on trial here is the Christian faith, and sacred scripture itself is being called hate speech. Now, you've won. You've won unanimously, I think 4 times. I remember in November, the Helsinki Court of Appeal unanimously ruled in favor of you and in favor of the bishop. But the prosecutors will not let it rest. So what do you think is going to be the next step? If you win this next stage, which I pray that you do, will the prosecutor let it rest then? Is there another state of appeal?
No, this is the final stage. And of course, I'm praying and I'm working that I would win this case because it is a very important precedent for the future, for possible similar cases, because I am not the only one in Finland who has written or talked about these issues. There are thousands and thousands of Christians who agree with the Bible, what Apostle Paul has said. And if I would lose this case, it would really mean a start of time of persecution of Christians, because then these opinions, these convictions would be criminal. It would be criminal to express your Christian faith, confess your Christian faith in public. So I think this is a very important important trial coming on.
I tend to agree for all the same reasons as yourself. As a Christian, I find it quite scary that in civilized Western nations, Christians are being persecuted. But of course, this has far wider implications. This is about free speech itself. So people of other faiths than none may be persecuted in the same way. What does this say about Finland, and what does this say about the European Union?
Yes, because we have in Finland, we do not have such word as hate speech in our law,
Right.
but we have the law about agitation against minorities. And I'm accused because of that law. And in Europe, we have similar laws in most of European countries. So if I would lose this case, then it would have ramifications also to other countries, because the LGBT advocates, they are very active and they are also following this case. And I think that they would be uh, we would see similar kind of legal processes also in other European countries in the
Yes.
future.
I do think if you happen to lose this case, which I hope you don't, but if you do, they may use it as an example, absolutely, and make sure that all Christians are silenced
Yeah.
and all people that don't agree with them are silenced. That's terrifying. But going back to my very first point, you're a parliamentarian, you were a minister. If this can happen to you, what does that say about the rest of us? How can the common folk feel protected by the law if the establishment will go after people who are elected representatives?
Yes, this is a very good question, and I think that in some way uh, the mere process has been some kind of warning sign and punishment, and to warn people that if you are open about your Christian faith, if you are open about what Bible teaches about, for example, marriage or uh, homosexuality, then you would be also in danger. And we can see that this has already had some consequences of self censorship in our society. But the other side is that this case has opened up many, many chances for me, for example, and for other Christians to speak openly and tell that what is the solution of the Bible to the problem of sin. So I have had many chances to tell the good news of gospel about Jesus in front of police, in court, and from press conferences. So I hope that this case would encourage people to be open about their faith, because the more we are silent about these issues, about what Bible teaches, the narrower becomes the space for these freedoms, the freedom of speech and freedom of faith. So that's why I want to encourage people to speak. Now it is time to speak and to be open about your faith and confess your Christian faith in public.
Oh, oh man, I'm so thankful for that. I think what you just said is spot on, because we are told through the scriptures that we'll be persecuted for our faith, but we'll be blessed because of that persecution. But we don't always realize that sometimes that blessing comes on the earthly realm as well as the heavenly realm. I think you've been blessed with a platform far wider than Finland in order to proclaim the gospel and in order to encourage other Christians to stand up. If we were all standing up as you are, then your head wouldn't stick out as one to chop off, would it? So there we go, to a message to all Christians: stand firm in the faith. Dr. Päivi Räsänen, thank you so much for what you're doing. God bless you. And I know ADF International have your back. We have your back here at the Common Sense Crusade too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, you might want to check out the ADF International website. There's a brilliant portfolio there of the entire story heading up to the Finnish Supreme Court, how it started, where it went on, and what the charges are. And as Päivi said, this is agitation against a minority group, which is Finnish speak for hate speech, essentially doing something or saying something that a minority group does not like or finds offensive. Now, I mentioned that Dr. Päivi was not the only one affected by this. And in a booklet that she published many years ago, it was published by the Lutheran Church. And we are very grateful to be joined by another guest who's been involved in this case from the very beginning too. This is Bishop Johanna Pohjolo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Is that right? Oh, I can't hear you, but I can see you. We've got some audio issues. Regular viewers of this show will know I'm not very good at pronouncing foreign names, but I try my best. Oh, there we go. Well, our technician's going to fiddle around and try and make the audio work so we can hear what you're saying. But the beauty of this story is that they're not alone. A lot of this persecution can be taxing. It can be hurtful and it can be demeaning, and one can feel isolated. But what I love about this is that the bishop and Dr. Päivi have each other in this war that's going on in Finland against the establishment, who seem to be Christophobic. They seem to be anti-Christian. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not just anti-Christian, it's anti-free speech. So even if you're not a Christian, this is an important case, and it's something that matters not just in Finland, but for the whole of Europe that we used to call Christendom. Anyway, if the bishop's microphone will be working in a moment. So Bishop Johanna is from the Lutheran Church, but most specifically the Evangelical Lutheran Mission Diocese of Finland, abbreviated LHPK. And for those that know, there are many different Lutheran branches at this point, but the bishop is also the chairman of the International Lutheran Council. And what happened was he published a booklet that Dr. Räsänen wrote, titled "Male and Female, He Created Them." I mean, how sound is that? It's true. It's a fact. It's from the scriptures. And so the bishop is being charged with publishing this booklet. And the argument would be against same-sex marriage, contrasting LGBT identities with the Christian notion of what it means to be human, and describing same-sex attraction possibly as being inherently sinful and possibly the result of a negative developmental disorder. That's a very good way of putting things. I'm going to use that one. I like that. But as I often refer to myself, it's disordered. God likes order, God's good order, and same-sex attracted lifestyles are disordered. And so this booklet was published, and the persecution has gone on. Now, Bishop, give me a hello, see if we can hear you. Oh, no, we're having technical difficulties, so maybe we'll come back to you. It would be very good to get your take on what's gone down so far. But viewers, do take an interest in this story and do monitor it, because the problem I find with it is that, especially Dr. Päivi won, and then won again, and then won again, and then won again. But the establishment continued to appeal, continued to file new charges. It's like they're not happy with losing, and they will not take no for an answer. But as you heard, in the Supreme Court, this is the final appeal level. So this will be the making or the breaking of the establishment in this particular case of quashing Christian teaching. Now, John, okay. Well, our bishop is reconnecting, so I'll give him a chance to get back on before we move on to the next story. But I'll read the verse that Dr. Päivi Räsänen wrote on her Twitter account. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Now, this is obviously Paul writing to the Romans, and the message is quite clear. These are shameful acts, unnatural acts, and desires and lust, therefore sinful and to be avoided. This is all she tweeted. Just a verse from the Bible. What has happened in Western society? We're taking something that people have taken for gospel for 2,000 years is now punishable under the law. Shocking stuff. Thank you for watching my Common Sense Crusade. If you'd like to watch the whole show, you can subscribe to lotuseaters.com for as little as £5 per month, and then you get access to a bank of content as well. My show is 3 p.m. every Thursday. See you there. Deus Vult.